Did you catch your tail? Bluebell.
Hey, it's Chanel. Welcome to another vlog. If I end up getting all of this lipstick on my teeth, just ignore it. Just ignore it. I've already tried that situation. It's just not happening. I don't have a lot of faith in it. I'm wondering, does this little Diamante that I've put on my old beauty spot scar actually look good, or does it look like I have a giant zit? I might take it off. I think it looks like I've got a giant blood blister on my face. That's not the vibe I was going for. Today's vlog is inspired by, I guess, my most popular, most viewed video to date, which was the Weird Books You've Never Seen vlog. And that was sort of paired with the Strange and Unusual Books vlog. And basically, those two videos were inspired by an independent bookstore in Melbourne called Metropolis Books, which was a revelation for me. It was the first bookstore that I went into which featured books I had never seen or heard of before in my life. Every single book on the shelf was novel to me and bizarre and unique and interesting and strange. And I bought a whole bunch. I really pushed myself way out of my comfort zone, so far out of my comfort zone, I was in space. I was no longer on planet. And therefore, a lot of the books weren't to my taste. I didn't enjoy them specifically, but it was a very fun and interesting time to just sample novels of a completely different taste. And so I decided to make a monthly segment, which I'm going to call Get Real Weird With It, based on the life advice of Frank Reynolds, which I do take to heart.
Well, I don't know how many years on this earth I got left. I'm gonna get real weird with it.
But this isn't going to just solely focus on weird books. Basically, I'm using this vlog to sort of maybe showcase what I would consider fringe books. So the definition of fringe is not part of the mainstream. Perhaps it's unconventional, it's on the peripheral, it's avant-garde, maybe it's a bit extreme. And whilst I am part of a fringe community, in regards to books, for me, that means books that aren't as heavily promoted and marketed as other books. So whether that is from the publishers themselves, the bookstores that stock them, or the booktubers that read them, these are books that are just not getting that much attention. They're sort of on the outskirts of the book world. So that could be because of their subject matter. It could be because they're independently published, or they're published by small publishers, or I guess because maybe bookstores just don't think they'll sell as well, so they're just not marketed as much. So I thought I would, use this vlog on my channel to maybe bring attention to some books that could be right up your alley, but you just haven't come across them. So not every book I read will be to my particular taste. I am just trying to sample a whole different bunch of genres, different types of books. Maybe I will discover a new author or a new type of genre, subgenre that I actually absolutely adore, but was previously completely unaware of. But at the very least, like, maybe I can find the right reader for the right book, because you got to see it here. I'm not bashing mainstream books. I still read a lot of mainstream books, the very hyped, marketed, talked about books. I like being part of the public discourse and discussion on said books. You know, same thing with authors that are massive and everything of theirs is going to immediately become part of the zeitgeist. I still am a part of that, but I also want to perhaps find a hidden trove of treasure and plunder that as well. And that's what I'm hoping to do with this channel, with this vlog. Needless to say, there will be some weird books on here, naturally. Maybe you've heard of some of these books, and that's fantastic. These are all books that I have never come across, either on Goodreads, on social media, or in the mainstream bookstores. So naturally, a lot of these I am sourcing from Metropolis Bookstore if you live in Melbourne. And there is a bookstore, another bookstore that you think stocks books that are not normally seen in the big chain bookstores, please let me know. I'm always on the lookout for more indie bookstores that are niche in their content. I decided for today's vlog to try and channel my inner punk a little bit, hence today's look. But I have read some books, so let me tell you about what I have discovered thus far. So the first book I picked up was actually at my library, and I was quite shocked that it was there, but I'm glad it was, because if I had paid the price for this, I probably would have been a bit upset. But this is Kommix by Charles Burns. So I am not familiar with Charles Burns's work, but I think they're quite famous in the comic book world for their illustration style. So this particular one, I'm going to show you some images, is basically a bunch of non-existent comic book covers. So he's just created a bunch of covers for books that don't exist. That's why a lot of them have garbled language, because they're not real comic books and it's just more about the illustration art. Now, in regards to the art, a lot of it is erotic, a lot of it is incredibly strange, maybe a bit disturbing, but also a bit homogenous, I found, in this particular book. There are a lot of comic book covers that were very same. Out of all of these hypothetical comics, the only one that I would probably be interested in reading, there's two. One would be this one labeled Huss, with this lady who's looking a bit apathetic, non-interested, but there's this weird chunk of slime on the corner. So it looks like, at first glance, a very mundane set scene, but then with that in the periphery, I'm like, oh, perhaps there's something sinister or odd going on. And the other one that I did enjoy was one that was a bit different to the other art style. So this one here with the heart, I thought that was cool. I am a sucker for any sort of heart imagery, but otherwise, look, I am rating it 2 stars, and I'm going outside of my comfort zone, so to speak. So I'll just write it in my review. But this would be a 2 stars for me, because yeah, there's nothing to read here. It's just images of make-believe comic book covers, and because most of them were very similar, it didn't do much for me. But I guess if you're a fan of Charles Burns's style and work, you might be interested in this. The next book I picked up was called Little Birds. I love the cover. I think this is absolutely, hey Sylvie, adorable. It's on a beautiful rose petal finish, so it's wonderful to touch. Hello, darling. But yeah, I do absolutely love the cover. This is a collection of short stories by 5 different authors. I will briefly tell you about the stories. Hello, darling. The first story is called 2 a.m. in Brownsville by Shai Watson. I would say that this was my favorite story of the bunch, and it's probably the most ordinary out of the stories. It's just about a woman who has had sex with her very unimpressive boyfriend and decides eventually that she would rather walk home alone at 2 a.m. than to spend another night with him. But it was well written, and it was my favorite piece in this book of short stories. So the next one is How to Lose and Win by Agatha All. So this is about someone who is in a bidding war on eBay for Joan Didion's blank exercise books, and is basically obsessed with making this other competitor suffer and driving up the price to eye-watering amounts. The next story is called The Lillians by Charlene Ellsby, and this is about a service industry worker having to wait on what she refers to as a Lillian, which is very similar to a Karen, but upper class. Then we have Walt Disney's Head by Jack Skelly. I do not have the ability to summarize what this story is about, so instead I am just going to read an excerpt from this story by Jack Skelly. This little bit within the story, so there's like little fragments of other stories within the overarching story. This is called The Epiglottis was Medusalicious. This is a tongue twister. The epiglottis was Medusalicious. Her carnal superpowers, her boulder hard Gorgon gaze, her endoscopic plunger, her magical freezing of spunk rock retraction. They may snake charm a totem pole for eons, poised and posed to re-release Mummy's daddy juice, but just one look and Medusa Mama stoned him out of his brain. Post-orgasmic blackout bliss lobotomized. La petite mort onto Lieberstod, a kind of craniotomy removing the tumor of consciousness. Jack Skelly is a trip, guys. And then there was Resurrect by Danielle Cholosky. And this story was about a woman who becomes obsessed with a man to the point of possession, and she masturbates furiously with a hairbrush until she's raw to the idea and thought of him. So that was those are all of the books that were in this collection. I am going to rate it overall a 3. I neither disliked it nor really loved it. It was fine, it passed the time, it was odd, it was strange, unusual. A lot of them very much heavy on the sexual component. But yeah, once again, love the book. I am interested to see why this is called Little Birds. Is it because like these are little tweets of stories, perhaps? I'm not sure. There wasn't an introduction in regards to how it got its title, but yeah, Little Birds, which doesn't even exist on a lot of the reading platforms at the moment, so I might have to add it to some. Then I picked up All the Violet Tiaras, Queering the Greek Myths by Jean Menzies. So for some reason, my dumbass thought this was a book of poetry, like a queer version of Greek mythology in poetry form. I don't know why. I should have read the back of the book, but I did not. It's not a book of poetry. Basically, this is like an usher in that this book is guiding you to other published works that have queered and retold Greek myths. So if you're looking for a reading guide for some LGBTQI'd Greek myths, this is for you. It was pleasant, but yeah, for me, it came across more as a reading guide to other stories. Like it's shining the light on some already published works rather than philosophical or heavily articulated essay. And the author at the end of the book also links you to her extensive database of queer Greek myth retellings. So this, what would I give it? I'd probably give it a 3. It's non-fic though. I don't tend to rate non-fic online. I'm currently reading Sherry by, her name's not just Colette. I don't know why they haven't put her full name on there. It is Colette Gautier Villars, and it is a lovely cover. It's a matte rough finish on the inside. We've got beautiful colored graphics. It's on an older style of paper. I did read the beginning note about the author, and I'm kind of glad I did. I'm just going to read this to you before I even tell you what the story is about. So Colette was born in Burgundy in 1873. She then moved to Paris, and at 20 married writer and critique Henry Gautier Villars. He published Colette's book under his own name. She then divorced him and wrote for herself. She worked as a dancer before having a lesbian love affair with Napoleon's niece, after which she married 3 times and at 40 had a baby. At 47, she decided to seduce her teenage stepson. Now, this book is about an older woman who is having a love affair with her friend's son, whom she has not only known since birth, but is basically like a godmother to him. So I think there is a 25-year age gap, and it's coming across very Woody Allen, not in regards to his movies, in regards to his romantic proclivities. So I am a bit icked out by that. Okay, that's not my jam. I'm all for May December romances, older women, younger men, but not if you've been in that child's life since the day they came out of your friend's vag. You know, holding them against your breast while you used to tell them stories and then doing that as an adult to your lover. It's a bit ick for me, but I'm not going to yuck other people's yum. In regards to how I'm feeling about it so far, it seems to be very all champagne, strawberries, satin, and trysts. It's a very decadent life, very laissez-faire. Just, she's wealthy, obviously, and she's carting her little playboy around with her and treating him. He likes the lifestyle. He likes to have a sugar mama, it seems. At the moment, the writing is good, but there is no emotional depth. The inner landscape of these characters is lacking. It's very surface level. So I'm not sure how it's going to go. Currently, where even am I at? I forgot to put my bookmark in here, didn't I? I am at page 28. I will say there is some dated terminology in there. I heard a word that is a slur for, well, I don't know if it's like this elsewhere, but for immigrants in Australia, people who've immigrated from European countries, which is my family, there was a slur that they used to call us. It's not wogs, that's one that we have reclaimed. It's another one that no one ever uses anymore. And that was in here. And I'm like, oh, I haven't heard that or read that in a long time. That's a flashback to the good old school racism. So be warned, there might be some offensive terms in there that are considered offensive now, perhaps not then, even though I think the one I read was always offensive. But we'll see how we go. So far, I'm not loving it. It's feeling like, once again, a 3-star, but I will continue on. It is a classic. It's a classic that I have never heard of before nor seen, so I thought I would give it a go. After I finish that, I am planning on either picking up Deadsheet. So this is a comic. This is a graphic novel by Bajorek, and I believe it's about a woman who, and it says that a woman stumbles upon a mysterious disc containing a spreadsheet with every person on the planet. And she discovers that when a name is deleted, that person dies. So it sounds really interesting. We'll see how it goes. And then I might also go on to Happy Death Club, Essays on Death, Grief, Bereavement Across Cultures by Naomi Westerman. At the moment, I'm just really into death rights, I guess. So I wanted to pick a nonfiction book that is about that. And it's just like, that's a super cute, can you even see it? That's a super cute cover. I like it. So I'll go into that. I'm going to read a few more as well, do a decent amount of books in this first one. But before I get on to reading, as I mentioned in my last vlog, obviously all of my current vlogs have been filmed at home. It's just me talking to you about the books I've read because we are housebound thanks to my daughter's injury. And I didn't realize how much I actually miss reading outside in a different location. I have discovered that when I have read books in certain places, whenever I talk about those books, I am immediately brought back to that moment in time. If I was sitting on a tram in a particular outfit at a particular time of the day, or if I was at a cafe eating some kind of meal with music playing, for some reason, my overall surroundings, like all of the senses I'm experiencing at that time, end up being tied to the memory of that book. Because I was talking about a book I'd read recently, I think it was The Master and Margarita, and I immediately flashed back to when I had laughed out loud at this restaurant while eating this gnocchi dish while I was reading it. And it was very visceral to me. It's almost like that type of memory you get with scent, when you smell a scent, and it's an immediate transportation. And I think that's so cool because obviously when I read books at home, it's great. But when I think about the reading experience of that book, I barely remember it because it's in the same homogenous location. Whereas when I think about the reading experiences of other books, they are vibrant and they've got the flourishes of everything else that was happening around me at the time. So I'm very much looking forward to when I can go out and read again. And it's something that I might try and do as much as I can, take a book with me just to read a little bit of it and maybe hopefully tie a bit of that place, a bit of that memory to that particular book. But besides that, I did go and yesterday before the kids came, pick up some money that I made from selling my clothes at a secondhand store, and I ended up thrifting some things. So I'm just going to show you what I got. Okay, so the first thing I got was a pair of shoes because they just looked in incredible condition. So I got these combat boots. They are a whole size too big for me, but I'm hoping that if I just wear really bloody thick socks, I can make it work. If not, they'll just go back to the store and I'll resell them. But these are by Stuart Weitzman. So I wanted some brown combat boots to go with my more brown academia kind of clothing because I find sometimes black boots with browns. I know you can do it, but I would prefer to be in the all brown hue. And I was obviously on a brown kick because everything else is brown. So I also got these very sparkly ballet flats by Giuseppe Zanotti. I hope that is coming across because it's just bloody stunning. I'm a magpie when it comes to shiny, sparkly things. I do like the, if I can do anything but add sparkle, I will always choose to add sparkle. But look, I love a ballet flat. It's so comfy. Doesn't make my feet look enormous and like clown feet. Yes, because I have a big foot, even though I'm a hobbit. But comfort, babes, comfort. And then my favorite kind of skirt, I got a little tartan brown mini. I love a tartan, check, plaid, whatever you want to call it, skirt. They're my absolute favorite with some funky tights. This one's by Reformation, which is one of my favorite brands. So I've got already almost like an outfit paired. Maybe these are the wrong, oh, that's not gonna go, is it? What do you guys think? That's the wrong brown, isn't it? This is probably better off with a black boot. God damn, this is quite light, but I'm still gonna see if I can make it work. But those are my current thrift store finds. Sometimes I swallow my consonants. I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to get my pronunciation back to how it once was. But I will come back once I've read some more Fringe books.
Hello, honey. You look funny from this angle.
Okay, so I have just finished Deadsheet by Bajorek. I'll show you the illustrations first. So this is all in black and white. And even though I don't love all monotone color schemes, I think that this has been done in black and white for a purpose. So I do like the illustration style. I wish it was in color, but I think it's in black and white because not everything is black and white. This is a book that definitely looks at the themes of morality and ethics and what does being a good person mean, and what's the difference between making decisions based on how it would affect your conscience versus how it would actually affect you with consequences. So in this book you have Nina, and she's at a job and she finds a floppy disk, and on the floppy disk is a list of every single human being currently alive on Earth, and if you delete a name from that list, that person drops dead immediately. So what would you do if you had the power to kill anyone with a click of a button? This also has a very paranormal aspect to it as well, but I thought it was really well done. It was a fun, fast, quick read, and I really enjoyed it, to be honest. I wish it was, I don't know, a bit more in depth. Like I said, it just flies by. It's so fast paced, and at the end you're left with a bit, it's not a cliffhanger, but you're unsure in what direction it would go next with the decision that was made at the end. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to continue on with Sherry, and I might also start Happy Death Day today. Okay, so I've just finished Sherry, I don't know how to say that, by Colette. And in the story, as I said previously, you have an older woman who ends up having a love affair with her best friend's son that she's known since the day he was born. And then one day he decides to go and marry a richer, younger woman, and then he comes back to her. She likes to call him child. And I'm like, oh, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. It's just gross. It's very Woody Allen, like I said. It just, and sometimes she calls him naughty little boy. So it's not my kind of romance. The book, like I said, just seems very frivolous. You know, like bubbles at the top of a champagne glass. The characters are very melodramatic with each other, but there's just no depth here. Their love feels as superficial as Sherry's obsession with wealthy women, you know, wanting to be a playboy, just be pampered and spoiled like a little child. So yeah, it just felt very performative. It didn't feel very real or layered. And like I said, because the author herself decided to seduce her own teenage stepson, it's a bit yuck for me. Like the writing, I said, is fine. It's a lot more dialogue, but yeah, it just seems pretty but pointless in my opinion. So I'm rating this a 2.5 because it's just that little bit under actually finding it okay and liking it. I'm now reading Happy Death Club. So this is essays on death, grief, bereavement, and like funeral rites. So we'll see how it goes. It's 96 pages, and I'll touch base with you once I have read this one. Okay, I have just finished Happy Death Club by Naomi Westerman. So these are essays on grief, bereavement, death. So you've got different ways people have funerals, different ways people grieve the dead. It also talks about horror movies. It also talks about the art world's obsession with painting dead women more than dead men. There were so many interesting little tidbits and facts in this that I found utterly fascinating. I'll share just a few of them with you. So we have mellification, which is the art of preserving a body in honey, which sounds delightful. And there was a story about a man who chose to have his ashes put in an egg timer so that he could continue to help his wife in the kitchen post-death. And then there's the fact that CPR dummies are actually modelled after the death mask of a woman who drowned. I'll read one passage from here that I thought summed up grief quite well. Every man dies twice. The first is when his body dies. The second is the last time someone says his name. We've been trying to find whatever way we can to deny this second death since we first evolved consciousness. Whatever we say about death and death acceptance, we can come to accept that our loved ones are dead, but we can't accept that they are gone. Grief is a psychic void space. Humanity's attempts to memorialize the dead are an attempt to fill that vacuum, to replace the person with a surrogate made from something less fallible than traitorous flesh. We use our stones, our carved marbles, our flowers to fill the empty space that is grief. I absolutely adore this. I loved it. This is a 5-star nonfiction read for me. I found it fascinating, easy to read, enjoyable, poignant, interesting, all the things. So this was fantastic. I am definitely giving this to my best friend Kate because this book is right up her alley and I think she'll love it as well. Apologize for the sounds. My ex is doing the garden because that's his new business. He used to be a hair and makeup artist for the big fashion houses in Europe, and then now he runs his own landscaping and arts culture business, and I hire him to keep my garden looking pretty. So I've picked 2 more books for this reading vlog. The next book I'm picking up is called So Beautiful and Elastic by Gary J. Shipley. That is the cover. This is a horror book. I don't really know what it's about. The blurb doesn't make sense to me. It's got a beautiful rose petal finish. A lot of these books do. For some reason, I guess the fringe books like to have the rose petal, and that's fantastic. So no idea, but it is horror. And then I've got Creation, On Art Unbecoming by Christopher Zeischegg. So this is the cover for that one, and this is on the back, and this also has a rose petal cover, and it says, so this doesn't even have a genre classification on Goodreads, but it says, it asks the bold questions that force us to understand the why and the how of what we create and that which we connect with. So it's a combination of essay, memoir, and fiction. So we'll see how it goes. I wonder if there's any pictures in here. No. But these are the last 2 that I'm going to read. We'll see how we go. I have no idea if I will like them or not, but the covers and the titles caught my eye. So that's why I picked them.
What are you doing, Bubs? You're rubbing your head on it just a second ago.
Can't put anything down on the floor in this house because she'll want to sleep on it. Is that comfy?
So before I tell you about the rest of the books that I read, I did start watching Agatha All Along, and I love it. The only other Marvel TV shows I liked were WandaVision and Loki. I do stand myself a sexy villain, especially if they're queer. Speaking of, was very disappointed with the Loki TV show not showcasing his queerness because I don't think there is anyone queerer than Loki in the Marvel universe. Loki's pan, they changed their gender, they changed their species. Yeah, and to see all that they did was have Loki be in a relationship with himself, a female variant of himself. I was like, that's it. It was still very hetero washed. So with Agatha All Along, I am hoping that they're a little more queer, because there was this scene with my queen, Aubrey Plaza, who is just smoking hot. And I'm like, oh, maybe we will get a bit of something something in this series. But otherwise, I'm loving this show. It's fantastic. Highly recommend. I've only seen 3 episodes, but I love it. Now on to hello, Bluebell. You want to say hello? You want to say hello?
Say hello.
The rest of the books that I read. So we have So Beautiful and Elastic by Gary Shipley. And I don't understand why books don't have blurbs. So this book doesn't have a blurb. It's only got other people's opinions on it. So I wasn't quite sure what I was getting myself into with this one. It is a horror. The horror element isn't revealed until towards the end. So you have a woman, I believe her name was Anne. So you have a woman who was a former underage sex worker. So she ran away from home at the age of 15 and got into sex work until she met another woman who she ended up being in a relationship with. Now, you do eventually find out what caused her to flee the nest at 15, and it is pretty horrific. I would say there should be trigger warnings for obviously pedophilia, statutory rape, and is it called neonaticide? I didn't love it. A lot of people were comparing this to Notice by Heather Lewis, which if you remember I gave a 1 star, and I do see the similarities. So it is a bit similar. In this, you do have an unreliable narrator, so I'm not really sure what the truth was. Whether it was her truth or another character's, either or, they're both horrifying. There is a lot of reference to the painting Young Girl Eating a Bird in here. It does tie into the story in a very disturbing manner. I didn't really like it, nor did I really get anything from it. Like, the writing was fine. I didn't find it phenomenal. I'll just go to a random page and pick a sentence for you. I was pretending not to hear him. Even after all that time away, I could spot the old routines, how he could break you down, drawing you into his vulnerabilities like they were a shared concern. A salesman for a sickness, and Teflon for a conscience, and the same icky smelling sweat like rotting onions. I'm going, I said. There's no quotation marks in this book either for when people are talking. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this one. I would say it's more on the litfic horror side, because the horror elements don't, besides this, the underage sex work, which does turn your stomach, the really grotesque, gruesome details are not talked about until the end, and they're talked about in a roundabout way. I did have to read one scene twice, because at first I thought, wait, what are they, is this what they're alluding to? And then I had to read it again. I'm like, oh, that's what they're saying. So sometimes things did warrant a reread, because they're not in your face, so to speak. They are sort of subtly under the table. But that was So Beautiful and Elastic. And the last book I read was Creation, On Art and Unbecoming. Now, so I feel hoodwinked by this book. I did not get what I thought I was purchasing. So we've got Creation, On Art and Unbecoming as the title, and you've got this sort of jigsaw puzzle piece of someone's face undone. Once again, there is no blurb. There is also no blurb on Goodreads. There is only what other people have said about it. And I'm just going to read you a few of the blurbs of what people said about it. And this said, "This is a particular combination of sex, death, beauty, and horror that feels downright transcendent." Here we are given a masterclass in dissection as a writer examines and pulls apart relationships of all kinds in all kinds of ways. We are shown the relationship between an artist and their work. We are made to think about the relationship between art and the viewer. We are all pulled in. And here we have, creation asks the bold questions that force us to understand the why and how of what we create and that which we connect with. It's a tremendously tender work showcasing a masterful command over his craft. Whether it's combining the depths of personal experience or charting the complexities of the true and false self, plunging into edifices of fiction and storytelling, or examining the power and propulsiveness of friendship, Christopher Zaishek writes from between realms, and his latest is a must-experience tome as vast as the entire spectrum of creativity itself. Now, I want you to imagine what you would think this was about based on that, and I'm going to tell you what this book is about, which I feel should be made front and center so people understand what it is they're actually buying. This is a snuff book, and I will put the meaning of a snuff film up here so you understand, but basically this is full of depraved sex and death. It turned my stomach. I literally lost my appetite reading. It was a bunch of short stories, and I kept reading the book because I thought maybe the other stories would be different. No, they are all the same. Mostly man on man, sexual violence, but there was an uncle on niece story in here too, and yeah, it was like going on Watch People Die on Reddit, and then maybe some other really sex kink one that involves, like I said, sexual violence and mutilation and torture. It's very sadistic. I did not like it. I guess you can say the overarching story on here is about a 30-year-old man who is a porn star, sex worker, and decides that there's nothing really special about their life or special about them. They want to die. So they go on a dark forum and they say, if someone can find out what's special about me, I'll let you do whatever you want to me, and then you can kill me. So that's the main gist of this. Like I said, there was absolutely nothing I liked about this book. Not the writing, not the subject matter, absolutely nothing. Creation on Art and Unbecoming, what? I just felt like I was absolutely bamboozled. This was like a snake oil salesman. I did not sign up for this. I'm trying to stay calm, but I paid for this. I believed I was getting an entirely different book to what I got. So I would not have picked this up. This was not a vlog on what's the most shit I can read. This was just fringe books I've never heard of, might be a bit weird and kooky, that are on the periphery, that seem interesting to me. I did pick all these because they sounded interesting. So I'm just going to choose a random page so you can see the writing style. This is how it's formatted, so it's spaced quite largely. And I'll just pick something. Hopefully it's nothing too full on. Okay, I'm not going to read that. Okay, this one seems okay. But I knew your injury was of a different sort. I recognized it as the kind a man might make if he both loved and hated you. It lacked the aesthetic of the marks you'd inflicted on yourself. But yes, this, to me, it was vile. It was vile and it sickened me. And I wish I hadn't pushed through, but like I said, because it was supposed to be short stories, I thought maybe there would be different ones, but they were all much of the same. And it's just not what I was anticipating. So I guess if you really want to read shocking, sickening, stomach-turning stuff, this would be the book for you. Maybe like you just become numb to other types of horror and you want to go to another depth. This is that kind of book. There are images in my brain that I wish I could bleach out. But if I could give this a 0, I would. That's how much I absolutely loathed my experience of reading this, but it's a 1 star. And now I will briefly go through all of the books that I read for this reading vlog. Sorry to end it on such a bummer, but that's how it happened. So my least favorite read of this was Creation, Art and Unbecoming by Christopher Zaishek. Then we have Kommix by Charles Burns, which I gave 2 stars. So Beautiful and Elastic by Gary J. Shipley, which I've forgotten the rating. It's either 2 or 2.5 stars, but I'll put it up here. I just don't have my notes on me. Then we have Shetty by Colette, and I gave these 2.5 stars. Don't know why I said it like that. Here we have All the Violet Tiaras, Queering the Greek Myths by Jean Menzies, and I gave this 3 stars. Then we have Little Birds. This is a group of short stories by Shai Watson, Garth Miro, Charlene Elsby, Jack Skelly, and Danielle Cholowski, and I gave this 3 stars, but love the cover. Then we have Dead Sheet by Benji Bajorek. This is a graphic novel. I gave this 4.5 stars. And my favorite read of this vlog was Happy Death Club, Essays on Death, Grief and Bereavement Across Cultures by Naomi Westerman. I gave this a 5 stars and I will be keeping this in my collection, so I only keep physical books I own if they are 5-star books. So I'm happy to add something to my personal library. And like I said, I've already asked my friend Kate and she's like, my God, that is right up my alley. Yes, please. I would love to read that. So I'm lending it to her to have a read, and then it'll be joining my other books that I love and adore. So thank you for coming along with me while I read Fringe books.
It's different, it's unusual.
Maybe something here caught your eye, but if you have any obscure books, unheard of, unpopular, unread by the masses books that you really enjoyed and think are fantastic, do let me know down below. Until next time, stay wild, Star Child.